I'm curious about how your ownership of the academy has evolved over the years. Can you share some mistakes you've made and course corrections? And you're adverse to do this, but advice that you'd give to some of these new black belts considering opening an academy.
The biggest mistakes that I've made, I think, were more relationship in nature and not tactical. You know what I mean?
It's often like that, I hear. Yeah.
So the problem is, man, I grew up in the martial arts since I was 5. And so I've watched every iteration of problem that you can fucking imagine. It's problematic because I think what happens is this is a systemic problem, I think, in relationships that branches into business relationships, right? But usually if you break up and there's no business, it's not that business relationships are different or should be treated differently or have different guidelines. All relationships should be treated the same. It's just that if you break up with a girlfriend, it's not as consequential as when you get divorced. There's just more if you got who's going to sell the house and or are we going to sell it? Are we going to, what the fuck are we going to, do we have kids that we got to now do custody? It's not that the parameters should change about what a good relationship is. It's just one is more consequential than the other because there's more, you're tied together more. So business relationships, you become tied together. And so when the relationship ends, it can be more consequential when you're trying to extract yourselves from this relationship. And so I think relationship advice in general for me is there's a problem that people have with they miscategorize a person. So for me, there's these orbits, right? If you imagine a center and then some orbits, right? I don't know who you are. You're unrelated to me. You're just a generic, I know there's 8 billion people in the world. That's just a number. I don't know who they are. I have no attachment to them. They're unrelated to me. I don't know you. I don't know of you. You have no consequence. Then there's an acquaintance. I know who you are. There's no consequence on my life. I don't lean on you. I don't need you. I know who you are. But it's the next orbit in is acquaintance, right? And then there's friends where now there starts to be some I give you freedoms and liberties and privileges that acquaintances don't have. You know what I mean? You're granted some privileges that acquaintances don't get. And then there's family. And if you're family, you get more privileges than acquaintances get. And then there's partner and you get more, do you know what I mean? And that's as close as you can get. And so I think the problem is, in a lot of relationships, people want the person to be family, but they're really just a friend. But they want to fill the gap. When this ring doesn't have that many people in it, people feel ugh, it's missing. And so they take somebody out of this one and stick them in this one. That's problematic, right? Or somebody showing you they shouldn't be on this level anymore, whether it's an upgrade to a new level or a downgrade. People go, well, they're my friend. And you're dude, they're fucking you. This is a problem. And they're but we've been friends, or it's my mom. And and it's I think that's the friction, is that people don't acknowledge who someone really is. And so you'll be oh man, you'll have somebody that's kind of in your gym and they're a great guy and they really like it and you really want them to be part of it. And then you're yeah, it'll work. Come on, do it. And then you put them in this position where they just got really tied to you. And it's not necessary. It's you guys got married, and maybe you shouldn't have married that person without dating them for a little bit longer. You know what I mean? You just upgraded that relationship because you really wanted somebody to be there, not because that person was deserving of it or crafted that place in your life where it just kind of organically occurred and they were such a part of it that you're wow, you basically work here. It's you made it such. And then that can run into problems because if they're not who you think, now you got to fucking get a divorce. Now you got to deal with it. And that's super problematic.
That's interesting, the concept of how they can not only come into orbit, but actually leave that particular ring.
Well, that's the thing. Relationships are fluid. Now, it's kind of if you run the same experiment with the same parameters 1,000 times, you should get the same result 1,000 times if the parameters are exactly the same. Now, if you change a little bit, you're going to get something different. But for example, Amal and I have a relationship. It's my teacher. Amal and I have a relationship. Our relationship has been the same and should stay the same, but that is because we haven't changed. We are still the same. I'm still potassium. He's still sodium. If you put those two things together, this is what you get. This is what it is. If I changed fundamentally, our relationship would change. Do you know what I mean? If he changed fundamentally, our relationship would change. We are not permanent. Like our relationship is only fixed because we are. Now everybody grows and changes. And so like the growth and change happens, but if both of you are growing in the same direction, the relationship stays the same. Or if it's negligible amounts of difference, I've changed my musical taste. That doesn't affect him in our relationship. So who gives a shit? So it's like, if the change is negligible, then it's fine. Everybody's growing and changing, but people view themselves as these fixed entities and therefore relationships as fixed entities, and they hold on to it or try to make it into something or pretend it's not something. And that's where a lot of pain comes from in relationships, I think. To have that understanding and to be willing to upgrade and downgrade people as they prove who they are, or like that's an important part of mental health and relationship health. And there's a whole honor thing, man. I have bullet points of like life lessons. This is what Casey's talking about, because everybody, they learn jujitsu from me, but then in side conversations, they get to hear all this shit. So there's this concept of like, there's literally your guest list. That's a concept people learn from me, is your guest list. So like, if you're a friend of mine, you have certain rights and privileges that friends have that acquaintances don't have, but you also get a guest list. So like your sister, we'll pretend you and I are friends. You have a sister. I don't fucking know her. I have no relationship with her at all. But if she shows up one day and goes, oh, I'm fucking Johnny's sister, no problem. This person has all the rights and privileges that you do because she's on your list.
Vouching.
That's the way it works. Do you know what I mean? I got to hold your list. A problem in a lot of stuff, especially martial arts schools, when you come back to kind of the microcosm, there's a meme that I put up probably once every 2 years. It's Denzel Washington with a cigarette in his mouth, and it goes, don't tell me what they said about me. Tell me why they were so comfortable saying it to you. Because if somebody says something shitty about a mall, I'm going to slap them. This is the way it is, bro. Like, this is holding the list and the example I give to my students. A couple years ago, this guy shows up, used to work at a mall's place, right? And so he's with a mall. He's family, so no problem. Shows up, he's looking to train. No problem, everything's cool. Hug. What's up, dude? And then I was like, so how's it going? How's the mall's place going? And he goes, well, I don't work there anymore. And I'm like, oh, no problem. Are you good to be here? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, are you good? Like, was it amicable? Because, bro, if you're not good with him, you're not good with me. You can't be here. You know what I mean? And it's borderline insulting if you guys are bad, but you think I'm not going to hold the list. You're insulting the shit out of who I am you're insulting my honor if you think I'm not going to hold the list. And so I was like, are you good? And he's like, I think so. I go, look, here's the deal, man. I'm going to make a phone call. And so like, you're welcome to hang out for the end of this phone call if you want. And if everything's cool, everything's cool. But if they tell me we're bad and you've been in my gym for fucking 2 hours training, I'm smashing you. Like, you can't. This is not okay. And he was like, yeah, man, make the call. I was like, no problem. Cool. Call Elliot. I'm like, what's up, dude? And he's like, hey, what's going on? And I'm like, hey, man, you good with this guy? And he's like, yeah, we're cool. And I'm like, cool. He's like, why? I go, cause he's in here. And I told him I was like, he's been in here for like 2 hours. And I told him if he has been in my presence for 2 hours and put me in a bad spot, I was going to smash him. And Elliot was just like, dude, I love you. Nobody does that anymore. Like, that's not a phone call you get anymore. And that should be the first phone call. I got concussion issues because of taking too many shots, right? And there was one time in Denver, I'm standing there. I see some guy, I haven't seen him in forever, and I forgot. He had a beef with one of my friends, and I totally forgot. I see him, and I'm like, hey, what's up, dude? And I start talking. And he's just talking. And then like 5 minutes into the conversation, I go, oh, shit. I was like, oh, hang on, bro. Like, did you work that shit out with so-and-so? And he's like, no. And I go, fuck, man, I'm sorry. Now, that's my fault because I wasn't trying to insult him, because that's insulting. If you assume somebody's not going to hold a list, that's insulting, bro, because you're saying they're a bitch. I go, hey, man, look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you in that position. I shouldn't have talked to you. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I'm going to go. Sorry about that. And we walked off. And Mandy was with me, and she was like, I was wondering why the fuck you were talking to him. I was like, babe, I forgot. She's all like, right. I was going to ask you, but I thought maybe they worked it out, and I just didn't know. No. That's like one of those, if you're around the academy long enough, you're going to hear that, like holding the list, fix your face, hold the list, shit like that. Like, these are life lessons. But that's the thing at the gym. I think the biggest problem I've had is putting people on that list that shouldn't have been there. You know what I mean? They hadn't actually earned their way on that list yet, but I really wanted them It's like the business version of like you marry the girl after 3 dates because you really want her to be the one. She hasn't proven she's the one yet. You just really want her to be. Done that and paid the price for it, for sure. And I would say advice to new school owners, people that are getting ready, is those things, like literally hold the list and make your circles, right? Like if you do that, it's very difficult for you to get fucked over because you're only putting people in the proximity to you that they have earned their way in, provably earned their way in. And you're willing to let them go, and they know it. And if they know what the conduct standard is, they should understand. That's the biggest advice I could get is don't think about the business. Think about the quality and integrity of your relationships, not the money part of it.